Hello everyone and welcome to a very nice game that was played yesterday in round 3 of the World Junior Championship. It is a game between Hans, Moke, Niemann and Andy Woodward. Both of them are Americans. American Grandmaster Hans versus American International Master Andy Woodward. This is the first game I believe we are covering by Andy Woodward on this channel, and I don't think we could cherry pick a better one, even if we tried. As probably you guys are wondering, why is Hans even playing in the World Junior Championship? Didn't he defeat Vladimir Kramnik with ease a couple of days ago, and he crushes top tier players all the time? Well, yes, but also the first prize is 3,000 euros. You also get a very nice shiny trophy, and you also get to be called world champion. So it's not bad. Plus, also you get to see Mexico. And you're probably thinking, but Hans is 1,000 rating points higher rated than everyone else. Not really. He is the top seed, but he isn't all that much higher rated than everyone else. Here in this game, he faces Andy, who is 200 rating points, some 200 rating points lower rated than Hans. But it is pretty much a series, the first tough game for both of them. So far, they faced not so stronger opposition, but for Andy, this is definitely big, as he is facing the top tier player of the top seed of the tournament. So let's check it out. And for those of you who play the Reti, who play the English, who transpose into the English from the Reti, this will be an absolute treat, because this game is like something from a Paul Morphy era. If you guys have problems with the English, you definitely want to try out this line. So let's check it out. Hans has the white pieces, and he opens with knight to f3. We have knight to f6, and now pawn to c4, transposing into the English. We have g6, knight to c3, and bishop to g7. So okay, all very standard stuff. You g6, fianchetto the bishop, knight f6, pawn to e4, and now usually d6 and castles are the moves that are played here, but we have pawn to e5. It's a very tricky idea, and the problem for white is that you should capture this pawn. If you don't capture it, black will consolidate it with d6, and black will have an equal position throughout the entire game. So a knight captures on e5 is by far the top move recommended by the engine, and of course Hans plays it. And some other players that have played this e5 line are Shahriar Mamedjarov, Yanni Pomneshi, and of course Daniil Dubov. So good things can come of it. So here we have castles. And knight back to f3, as you know that now black will pile up on this e4 pawn, so rook to e8 and d3. Hans defends it, but now you immediately strike in the center with the d5. So okay, you sacrifice the pawn for material, and what comes next is pretty straightforward and quite a lot of theory behind it. C captures on d5, knight captures on d5, of course the pawn is pinned, and the bishop to d2. You have to also add additional support to the c3 knight. So bishop to g4 and bishop to e2. Now if Hans can just castle and get a move to breathe, he will be perfectly fine. But of course, Andy will not allow this. Knight to b4 puts pressure on the d3 pawn, so you have to move the bishop. Bishop to e3. Now the pawn is defended by the queen and by the bishop, and now bishop captures on f3. This is how you justify being down a pawn. Now white can either give back the pawn, which is not recommended if you play bishop captures, but you play g captures, and now you get this position where you keep defending the pawn, but you will not really be castling kingside anytime soon, or maybe you will. We'll see what Hans does. But for the moment, he's up a pawn, and he wants to enjoy his pawn for the rest of the game. And he is the higher rated opponent, so he should prove that this is okay for white. So knight 8 to c6, continuing development. And now there is a game where a3 was played, but Hans plays pawn to h4. Now, interestingly, a3 and pawn to h4 are the two top engine moves, and I've even allowed the engine to crunch the numbers like to depth 50, and the engine goes for pawn to h4. So Hans definitely knows this line, and he knows how to properly play it. So it is now, as of move 13, that we have a completely new game. Knight to d4, again with a threat of knight to c2, check winning material. So of course Hans has to do something about that. He plays rook to c1, and now queen to d6, nicely developing the queen, connecting the rooks, and it's Hans to move. He plays pawn to a3, says, all right, I'm not just gonna allow your knight to remain so active here. Knight to a6, and now we have pawn to f4. Hans just continues playing like nothing is happening here. We have rook 8 to d8, and now pawn to b4, of course occupying the most important square on the board while preventing knight from coming into the game via the c5 square. So Andy will have to play c5 himself. We have pawn to e5. You could advance the pawn to b5 right now, but first he grabs more space by attacking the queen. queen to e7, and now pawn to b5. We have knight to c7, and now again, I had to crunch the numbers because I have no idea what is happening here. The top moves here are knight to e4, which of course makes sense. Other idea you might come to is king to f1, because the king is very vulnerable on e1, and the other one is pawn to h5, just starting an attack on the king side. However, Hans played queen to a4 here, and here he already starts getting into a little bit of trouble. We have queen to e6, now preparing queen to f5 to go after the d3 pawn, and now comes bishop to d1. Here, the way to play this is not to wait for black to do something, as you do have a king on e1, is to play h5. And now the point is, after, let's say, g5, you will play captures, and after bishop captures on e5, now you play queen to c4, which is a bit different than what happened in the game. Now, if queen to f5, you will simply play pawn to g6, and already your attack is happening a little bit faster than black's attack. But after queen to e6, Hans played bishop to d1. Again, a very useful move, very nicely controls the knight here, all of the squares, and you are preventing anything from coming to b3, but it allows queen to f5. The bishop no longer guards the d3 pawn, so you have to do something about that. Queen to c4 was played, and now comes bishop to h6, just piling up on the entire position. There's no other way to call this. It's really something you would expect in a Morphy game. Knight to e4 by Hans, going for that knight to f6 check, but now bishop captures on f4. Grabbing a pawn, knight to f6 with check, king to g7, and even the knight captures on e8. So now Hans even wins the exchange. Rook captures on e8, and queen captures on c5. Now attacking the knight on c7, and Andy plays knight captures on b5. And now how do you continue here? Hans is now up the exchange, but he is the one under pressure. Both of the knights are here, the bishop is here, the queen is here, the rook occupies the same file as Hans's king. So what can you do? It seems like you could win some material here, but not really. If bishop captures on d4, knight captures on d4, and queen captures, there's bishop captures on e5. Now threatening all sorts of nasty discoveries. And look at this. If queen to e4, offering a queen trade, and okay, it looks like you cannot move the bishop because the rook on e8 is hanging, there's bishop to g3. Absolutely incredible. Now, you cannot take the queen because you would be in check, and you cannot take the rook because you would be in checkmate. So that's kind of the problem here. You're going to have to play rook to f1, give up the queen, and with it, the game. So after this knight c captures on b5 move, Hans said, all right, I'm just going to get my king away from the middle of the board. He castles here, and now rook captures on e5, attacks the white queen, bishop captures on d4. Hans tries to give up his own queen, but of course black cannot capture as the rook here is pinned. So knight captures on d4, and now queen captures on d4, continuing to pin the rook here. Bishop captures on c1, you have to play this, otherwise you're just going to be down material. And here, rook to e1. Now this is the absolute best move, and it seems like Hans got away with it. He gave back the exchange, and he equalized the material. He's still down a pawn, but he's surviving, and he's threatening to win a full rook here. So bishop to f4 and the defense, and now comes rook to e4. And it seems like Andy should be close to resigning now, because the bishop is hanging. You can't really defend the bishop. If you move the bishop, then you're going to lose the rook. But the problem is it's actually Hans who is lost here. So feel free to pause the video and try to find the absolute best move for Andy while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on finding this incredible move. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it is queen to f6. Believe it or not, this actually works. It's the first move that I thought of, but then I immediately said, no, of course, there's no way, because after you captured, there's just no good follow-up. But there is. If rook captures on f4, rook to e1 check is actually quite okay. After king to g2, queen captures, and rook captures on d1, you're up a pawn with a much better position. A3, d3, and f2, and h4 are all isolated pawns. Black has only 2 pawn islands, white has 4 pawn islands, and as black is up a pawn, this, if played to perfection, probably black will win this. But Hans did not want to go for this. He probably wanted to keep chances alive. He played pawn to h5, and now comes rook to g5 with check, king to f1, and now even bishop to e5, attacking the queen here. Queen captures on e7. Other moves really are not helping Hans, and now pawn to b6. This is the sort of the final nail in the coffin of this game, as it prevents the white queen from helping out with the defense of the pawn here. So queen to a8, trying to get the rook into the game and maybe even checkmate the black king somehow, but now g captures on h5. Rook to e3, now freeing up this diagonal for the white queen, and now bishop to h2, going for rook to g1 check. So rook to e8, trying to go for rook to g8 check, but now rook to g1. This comes with check, king e2. We have king to h6, even wasting a move for this because there is no counterplay. And the problem is, while d4 is very nice and it opens up all sorts of possibilities, including this diagonal, the problem is after queen captures on d4 and queen to c6 check, you can play king to g7, and now after bishop to c2, the simple queen to g4 check is enough. And after king to d2, you can even play just the awkward bishop to e5, not allow any checks along this diagonal. The bishop is now very nicely controlling it. You cannot capture with the rook because of queen to d4 check, picking up the rook, and now you have to worry about a lot of stuff here, but your king will not survive in the center of the board. So after king to h6, bishop to c2 was played by Hans right away, but it is not enough. Queen to c3 by Andy, going after the bishop, rook to c8 defending and attacking, and now rook to e1 with check, king f3 and queen to f6 with check, going for the sort of a ladder checkmate here. King to g2, now comes rook to g1 check, and he was in this position on move 42 that Hans Moke Niemann resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. Now, the problem is, of course, once you capture, queen captures an f2 check happens, and after the king moves, queen to g3 will be checkmate. So really a wild game where both players played at an incredible accuracy. I know that, okay, if you're into that thing, I think Andy's accuracy was calculated some maybe even 98%, 97.3 or something like that, but I believe even Hans's would be like maybe 90 something. So Hans didn't commit any murders here or any critical mistakes. It was just that Andy played that much better in any critical position that was that happened on the board. He just played a perfect game here, and Hans paid the ultimate price. So brilliant victory for Andy. Let me just check who Andy is facing next, so we see what we are dealing with here. Sorry about that. So Andy, Marc-Andrea Maurizi is from France, is his next opponent, and I have no idea where Hans is. Andy is on 3 out of 3. Let me just check who Hans is facing next. He's currently 31st, and he will be facing Juan Sebastian Melian from Paraguay. But yeah, I mean, an incredible game where you really you'd really think, okay, Hans will just cruise through this World Junior Championship, just destroying everyone, but not really. You face Andy Woodward here. He plays a perfect game, and you just get absolutely destroyed here. So I mean, up to this point where it's a known position and a3 is a known move, Hans plays the absolute strongest move recommended by the engine, h4. So he is not surprised by this, or maybe he found the top move over the board. Doesn't really matter. He had an excellent position and a playable one, but you can see just how difficult it is to play this with the ruined pawn structure, with your king in the center of the board. So if you have problems playing against English, maybe try employing this line. So it's not really, okay, this is a transposed English, but e5. If white doesn't capture on e5, you've already equalized. If white does capture, yes, you're down a pawn, but all of the moves that follow are so active and so enjoyable to play, like knight b4, then you threaten here, then you just keep developing. It's so nice to play. The moves come naturally, and especially for like a blitz and bullet, I mean, you guys should really try this. So yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. We'll see what happens. Will Hans be able to recover from this, and is he still in contention for the top prize in this World Junior Championship, or will someone else become world champion? We'll see what happens. I would like to wish a very happy birthday to Carlos Carle, and I would like to thank Paul Mila, Kenneth Fraser, Ludi and Ralph, and Mehmet Yasar for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing to check up on your wonderful suggestions and whatever else happens in the chess world. So thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.